I just coming, he asked me to chair the meeting, so I will call the meeting to order at 7:04. It's a hybrid meeting. You have Savannah Kitchen joining us there. I don't see our consultant yet. Oh, anybody else there?
No, just Savannah.
Oh. We're the first order of business is the minutes of the last meeting. I was not in attendance unfortunately, so I can't comment on it. There was somebody move.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Wait, I have a comment.
Okay. Well, sure, it's been moved in second, and so we make your comment, and then we can.
This might. I think that.
What's your comment?
I'm trying to find it. It talked about the follow-up on the here it is on page 3 under watershed management plan. It says nutrient allocation plan subcommittee chair Martha Carter, members Greg Stryker and Bob Powell. Greg did offer to, first of all, I'm not signing to be the chair of that. We'll talk about that later. Secondly, Greg and Mary volunteered to be on the subcommittee. Bob Powell did not, so the minute should reflect replacing Bob Powell with Mary.
How many Greg is a test meeting?
No, I reached out to you because I saw your meeting and I said my notes didn't say that you had volunteered and you said that's correct. I didn't.
Okay.
Greg, you still.
Do you need help?
Well, it's a bigger issue, it's a bigger project.
Okay.
I'm gonna speak to it
Sure.
later.
Okay.
Okay. And you can then decide if you want to be involved or not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so there's one correction to substitute Mary Royal for Bob Powell.
Yes.
In that last paragraph.
Yes.
Can that be a friendly amendment to the person, either motion or? I thought there was, I heard a second.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion second, a comment, any further comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Do I have to abstain? Was I here? If you weren't here, no, I was there. Oh, I abstained.
And who else is abstaining? Greg. And David are abstaining.
Henry. We have two guests who have joined us. One, I believe, did TRC just win?
Yes.
Nielsen is the lead consultant, of course, that we all know, representing TRC and Savannah Kitchen tonight. There are three kind of sense of urgency for timing issues. The being Carl is a consultant on an hourly fee. I would like to make a motion
Yeah,
that
don't need to, we stood on the agenda anyway, we're going right to him.
I'd like to make a motion that we go to those three items right away. So that we can discuss them, make some decisions, and then move back to the hearing session.
Okay, I just assumed because we were hearing from our guests that was on that, that's fine.
Thank you.
We're out of the be sure we'll entertain that motion. Is there a second that we take up the three things with our consultant? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And
Thank you.
perfect time. Mary, why don't you go ahead and
Thank you.
present with Carl?
For our August LMAC meeting and July 25th planning and zoning meeting, and then subsequent to that, a mid-August planning and zoning meeting, we have two things in front of us to review. Based on the July and August planning and zoning and LMAC, we had a series of questions for TRC as planning and zoning is developing their 10-year plan for conservation and development. In front of you from TRC is a statement that they've provided to us that really gives us a really, and this was asked by planning and zoning, good historical perspective of our lake where were we in 1998 when we did a watershed management plan? Where are we today? That will be a supplement to chapter 4, natural resources, which is also in front of you. And if you go to page 5, you see a lot of things in red. I have no pride of the authorship, but because of our timing, we had to provide something to our town planner so that he could insert it into that particular chapter related to natural resources for the town of Columbia for this 10-year plan. So cut to the chase. We need to, as LMAC, advise planning and zoning that this is an acceptable amount of information for the past of what we've experienced at this lake, the present where we are, which Carl is here to explain, and the future for that 10-year plan. I'm really thrilled that in this particular plan, we're not only providing what we've done, and there are things we've done well, and things we still need to work on, but also some of the strategies, which is the last page, also in red. What page is that? It's on the back, and it's page 14. Some of the strategies for us to move forward to protect the lake. So we need to review this tonight. I apologize, I got it out last night as quickly as I could, to come to some agreement. We're about a week behind of when the town planner needed it, but there will be more renditions to this. This will not be the final. John, the town planner, has been very upbeat with us that, don't worry, we're gonna adjust this and change this. Mark, I think you would agree that this is not set in stone yet.
It's a long process.
So we have Carl here to answer any questions relative to his statement. We have cut and paste a lot into it. You'll know he discussed water clarity. We discussed water clarity in chapter 4. He discussed surface phosphorus levels. We discussed invasive species, nutrient allocation, and all the things that TRC has provided in terms of the strategies and potential cost of what we would ask the Board of Selectmen to invest in for protecting the lake. So I have some questions. And you should get it. Is that okay?
There you go, please go ahead.
Hi Carl, glad you could join us, and
Hi.
hi Savannah, I'm Lucky Carter. I appreciated your report. We met with Chick Schifrin, Mary and I did a couple of weeks ago. Chick was the driving force behind the 1998 watershed management plan. To kind of pick his brain on how to go about updating the plan, which again, we'll talk a little bit more about later. And in his assessment that they had done for that report, they looked at SESHI or water clarity and oxygen. And I was curious, here, you don't make any mention of oxygen, and was there a reason for that? You chose to focus on water clarity and phosphorus. I was just curious, but from my own understanding, mostly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so water clarity is a big factor in sort of an easy and economical way to look at overall health of your lake. So the Secchi disc, if you can drop it down and see it deeper, it's a healthier, cleaner lake. In general, it means it has less suspended sediments. It has fewer algae cells in the water column, and that's sort of an indication of how much nutrient is in the lake. So Secchi disc is really sort of a nice, easy, economical way to track health of a lake over the long term. Dissolved oxygen is a factor that is very variable based on conditions in the lake. So it would be useful to see how low DO or dissolved oxygen goes in the lake sort of pre-dawn hours. We're just not out there during the pre-dawn hours. And when we go out during the middle of the day, the sun shining, the plants on the bottom, as well as the algae are all making oxygen for the water column. And we go out and it looks healthy every single time we go out. So unless you measure oxygen at the pre-dawn hours when it sat all night with no oxygen, no primary production or photosynthesis occurring, you're not really getting a true indication of lake health. You're just getting sort of the conditions at the time when you go out, which is the middle of the day. It could be windy, there could be surface movement of water, it could be photosynthesis. So we're seeing a nice healthy lake, even if there's a big algae bloom. So oxygen's not a good factor for that. The phosphorus is pricier because you have to involve a lab to do that testing and get the results that we need to see. But it's a measure of what's in the water over time. So going out once a month like we do is a very good snapshot of the lake's health over the past month, because that water is not pushed through the lake very quickly. It's actually in there for months. And so it's sort of an aggregate average of the conditions in the lake as a result of the past several rain events or many rain events that have filled the lake and pushed water over the dam. So we look at phosphorus and Secchi disc. Oxygen, we do measure it. It's just not useful as a lake manager for determining overall health.
That's super helpful, thank you.
But isn't it important at the bottom, because that changes the phosphate?
Just trying to keep it simple. Yes, that's true. That's true. We do measure oxygen at the bottom. When we go out monthly, we measure surface and bottom. And the bottom is also going to be very stable over time. What affects bottom oxygen levels is sort of that how long since it has turned over or the lake has flipped, which happens every spring and every fall. You get sort of the temperature at the surface and bottom being equal, and the lake mixes throughout the water column. After that has occurred and the warm temperature sets up for the summer, you get lower and lower oxygen in the bottom because there's no primary production, no photosynthesis occurring down at the bottom, and there's no wave action down at the bottom to mix surface air into the water. And what you get actually is dead and dying algae cells falling from the surface down into that bottom layer and decomposing or using up that oxygen over time. And as the season goes on, we see lower and lower oxygen levels in the bottom, and actually the bottom water, it gets to zero, but it's how deep is that zero occurring at. So when you first start the season, it might be all the way at the bottom, 22, 23, 25 feet deep. That's where it's anoxic. But as the season goes on, it might be 24 or 18, 17. It starts to creep up into the water column. And that's normal and natural. It happens in all lakes because there's algae production. And so again, you'd have to have a lot of good data over a long period of time, which you guys do have. But you'd have to look at it almost monthly by season and do sort of a real analysis of that. And we didn't have the budget or time to do that for this snapshot.
Please talk about that also in relation to the recommendation to use alum, because I'm aware that alum does precipitate phosphate out, but when you take the phosphate out, you have an algae kill because suddenly you have lack of the basic nutrient that was making that. So more sinks to the bottom, there's more oxygen use as that algae is decays, and it results in fish kills.
Well, that's not necessarily true. So there's a lot of assumptions there.
If properly managed, it
Yeah,
doesn't happen, but it's very easy to happen.
Well, it has happened early on when alum was starting to be used. I know of the case you're referring to.
Yeah, but just so you know, those fish kills that had occurred early on, like 30 years ago, weren't related to the low oxygen caused by the alum treatment or the dropping of the algae cells down to the bottom. It was a different issue altogether, and it's partly a result of changes in the pH of the water column. When they were first putting out alum, they would put out aluminum sulfate alone, and that would change the pH of the water. It would actually increase the pH. And now they put out a buffered solution, 2-to-1 ratio of aluminum sulfate and sodium hydroxide, aluminum hydroxide, and the two mixed together create a neutral pH environment. And the companies that are doing this work now have a lot of experience, and they actually equip their boats with 2 separate tank systems, and they can adjust the ratio of those 2 compounds as they go based on real-time measurements of pH in the water column throughout the day as they're doing their treatment. So they're much more sensitive to that issue, and they have solved that issue. So at this point, you know, those types of fish kills do not really happen any longer.
What time of year is that done?
They can do it at any time of year. It depends on the lake. We often will try to treat our lakes that we're doing in the springtime before the algae gets dense. But that's not why we're doing it in the spring. We need the water to be at least 50 degrees, 45 at the low end, but 50 is what we like to see because the compounds do better at binding with the phosphorus at that time. And then there's 2 different things that are happening when you do an alum treatment. You're either doing a treatment to remove phosphorus from the water column, which is an important piece of it, or you're actually not worried about the water column at all. You're doing a treatment to get the alum compound down to the bottom so it can coat the sediment and actually bind the phosphorus within the sediment itself to keep that from recycling or recirculating back into the water column every summer when that bottom water goes anoxic. So it creates sort of a bottom shield and resets your lake. And we're doing some testing this fall to see what ratios of compounds of phosphorus, iron-bound phosphorus, loosely sorbed phosphorus, and the different types of phosphorus in your sediment to see whether an alum treatment would be appropriate at that level of a high dose bottom treatment, or whether it wouldn't be beneficial. We don't know for sure yet until we get that data. And then the other piece of data that we just got was the bathymetry map, which we didn't have prior to this summer, which allows us to calculate out how much of the bottom is actually being going anoxic during those summer low oxygen level conditions. Is it, you know, when I did my calculation before, I estimated 30 acres. We just did the calculation. It's more like 130 acres. So it's a bigger factor than what I had initially thought. But I don't have the numbers yet because we don't have our new sediment data yet from the bottom. So a lot going on.
I have another question, but if you want
Carl, this came out in our discussions in planning and zoning as we are evolving with this particular chapter focused on Columbia Lake. There are some on planning and zoning who are well read in the 1998 watershed management plan. And in particular, there was some emphasis in 1998, and this may be apples to oranges, that the focus of the phosphorus load and how we remediate that phosphorus load was septic systems only. There was no mention, for example, of stormwater runoff. As we fast forward 28 years later and reading your report, there's a great deal, almost 80+%, 85%, 90% that is focused on stormwater drainage. So why in 98 there seemed to be no emphasis or focus on runoff or stormwater drainage, and now 28 years later, we're saying, wow, vast majority of this may be coming from.
Well, believe it or not, lake science has evolved since 1998, and so I've been active in the field since that time. That was actually when I got my first job I was working in 95, basically, is when I started as a consultant. And so that's how we used to do it. We would tally up sources within the watershed. So you'd count up how many acres of land was agriculture, how much was industrial, how much was mining, how much was transportation, and we would go through and do sort of an accountant's view of a watershed, where you would say each septic system produces this amount on average, and we'd count up how many septic systems were close to the lake and come up with a number. And that's a good approach in a vacuum of I don't have any data. And it was something that a lot of state agencies would do because they didn't go out and collect the data themselves. You folks have, since that time, you've been building a long history of data that's real data on the lake. We've been going out and collecting it. And then we did what's basically a hydrologic and nutrient budget a couple years ago, where we looked at the sources of phosphorus. We measured the phosphorus coming in your tributaries and in your storm drains. We measured how much was coming from internal recycling, and we're in the process of updating that with some more, detailed information on the bathymetry of the lake and on the actual phosphorus content of that sediment. But the method we used was different. It was based on the concentrations of phosphorus that we're seeing in the lake currently, and we modeled it. You basically are going backwards to say, based on the shape and depth and structure of the lake, how is it possible that this amount of phosphorus that we're currently measuring in the water column got there? And you kind of have to back into it based on where the water comes from. And if 80% of your water is coming from surface flow, it's not coming from ground flow. It's a very small percentage that's coming in from groundwater. I think it's less than 2%. And so it would have to be really, really dirty septic discharge going into your lake with only 2% of the water coming in through that groundwater source, to outweigh your stormwater, which is 80% of the flow coming into the lake. And so it's a different way of looking at it, and we modeled it rather than doing sort of an accounting of land use categories. We did an actual hydrodynamic model of the lake. It's I think a better approach and a little more accurate approach. And the other thing that's happened since 98 is there was a lot of focus by state agencies back in the early 90s and even the late 90s of how lakes need to be managed by fixing the people around the lake, and that the finger was pointed by the state agencies not because it was something that could be solved, but because it was the easy path for education. You can easily educate a lake resident that it's important for them to pump out their septic system and to deal with their pet waste and yard clippings and all those fertilizers that they put on their lawns, because they have a vested interest in the outcome. They live on the lake, and it's good for the environment generally for them to have those good housekeeping practices. But in reality, the amount of phosphorus that moves from a septic system that's properly functioning to a lake is very, very low. It absorbs to the particles of soil, and nitrogen moves in, but we've determined in the last 30 years that nitrogen's not as big of a deal in most lakes in the Northeast. It's a very big deal in ocean or coastal environments, but it's not the driving force for nutrient enrichment in most freshwater lakes. And so historically, the focus on septic, which have a lot of nitrogen coming in and phosphorus occasionally if they were failing, was a good, smart strategy. Educate people on this because it's what people knew at the time. Now they've learned that phosphorus is generally the limiting nutrient in most freshwater systems. And because of that, the focus has been on phosphorus and stormwater for the last 20 years has been where the money from EPA goes. It's the state grants go towards resolving stormwater issues. There's very little money dedicated to septic other than let's sewer an area, put in sewers and, you know, get grants or funding for that type of work. That's not necessarily the case of what's needed, and it's often not the most economical. And people have found out that when you actually look at how much waste actually comes in from septic systems, you go and spend extensive amount, millions of dollars sewering an area, and you find out that the lake's not much different. Because it takes out the nitrogen, which isn't a limiting not a problem really, and it hasn't done much to resolve the phosphorus, which is primarily coming in from storm drains and stream tributary runoff.
The focus on today, and I've heard this on Connecticut Federation of Lakes, is it's not about lakefront, it's about watershed.
Yeah.
That this is a collective effort for partnerships. We've got to fix, not either or, we have to fix both. If there's any.
And the challenge with that is politically just getting people that aren't living on a lake to buy into the fact that they're responsible for just the general ecological health of a water body downstream. Do the right thing type of thing. And it's hard to get that buy-in. The other thing that's been happening over the last 5 years or so is the shift in thinking from lake managers to say, you know, we've been working on stormwater solutions for the last 20 plus years, and the results at the end of the day aren't that impressive. They're the right thing to do, but the lakes aren't getting better. And, you know, DPWs, the public works departments are spending money. They're putting in deep sump catch basins, drainage swales, all sorts of infiltration areas to infiltrate stormwater and make improvements. And it does reduce sediment and it does reduce phosphorus, but in the end of the day, the lake is still not where most people want it to be. And so, we're starting to learn that a lot of that issue is resulting from historic inputs of phosphorus that have accumulated in the lake over time and aren't going away because they can't go over the dam or through the dam that's been put in place. And so a lot of communities are starting to say, well, what can we do about the in-lake phosphorus that's trapped there? And alum is one solution, dredging is another solution. There's even solutions where people are trying down on the Cape, what's called sediment inversion, where you're actually taking the clean sediment from down below and pumping it up on top of the dirty sediment to sort of flip the lake bottom over. And that's been less successful, but it's, you know, people are trying to find ways. So I just would say, we're not ready to say alum is the solution or the only solution, nor are we willing to give up on working on the watershed and making progress there. And the other thing is the two go hand in hand. So if you work on the watershed and you do an alum treatment together, your lake will be better, and it will be better longer for the more benefit or the more improvements you make in that watershed to keep the phosphorus from getting to the lake, the longer that alum treatment will have benefit for the lake, because it won't be, if you think about creating a fine layer of flock of alum and bound with phosphorus at the bottom of the lake, as soon as more algae cells start to die and settle on top of that, it gets buried. And after a few years, in most cases, it's 15 or 20 years, that benefit of that alum treatment deteriorates to the point where you can't even tell it was there, at which point you either need to do another alum treatment or, you know, have fixed all the phosphorus sources coming into the lake over that time, over those 15 to 20 years. So most lakes work to do both. They try to fix the stormwater and resolve some of the issues short term, so that people that are around the lake and using the lake can have the benefit of an improved lake while they continue to work on other issues like stormwater that take a lot longer and a lot more money to implement.
I'd like to, comment on the sense that was just created that the, management plan early on was focused on septics. I'm sure that the concern of the public was focused on septics, but the plan itself focused on controlling phosphate that was, from impervious surfaces that was running off directly, into the lake. And was using infiltration and other sources like that, the same thing that septics do, to take phosphate
Exactly.
out of the water, so, it may have mentioned septics, but septics weren't the focus or the cure that was being pursued.
Now, my bad, good point, if you, having just reread it after planning and zoning had all these questions, nutrient allocation
Yes,
was the number one. The next 7 were septic systems,
right,
and there's nothing related to stormwater runoff.
right,
So you're right.
right, we were, we were
But-
looking at how people around the lake could help as opposed to how the town and the state could,
And the watershed.
do.
Yeah.
Well, impervious surfaces are.
Impervious surfaces is stormwater. So that's basically what we're talking about. It's one and the same, just different terms.
And one of the, let me ask you about the concept of removing the phosphate from the bottom. Do we have a disposal problem? I'm assuming that. And one of my concerns with the siphon is the same, that is considered to be, unacceptable water or sludge to just go dump somewhere. You have to have I'm asking you as the consultant and the person that hopefully maybe is better on the top of this than me, that you can't just go and dig it and take it and spread it on a field, or, we can't just, drop phosphate laden water into the Willimantic River and, have, big algae blooms down there.
So 2 things. Your water at the bottom of the lake isn't all that bad. So the phosphorus levels, I think I had a chart in that report I sent you, and it for the most part, the water levels are, your lake is running like 10 to 15 micrograms per liter at the surface, and it's running 15 to 20 at the bottom most of the time. But once in a while, and in the last 30 years, 35 years, it's had 5 or 6 times where it's jumped up to 80. So it does get high when you have those, and I'm presuming those are from during, long, hot, dry summers that the lake really develops.
Is there a point, a threshold there where the state says, no, you can't dump that somewhere, or
No.
we don't have any trouble?
There's no, so you will need permits.
Yeah, we need permits, that's why we never did it.
You should have a permit. The discharge from the lake to the downstream waters, if it's all flowing water, the phosphorus doesn't have the kind of impact it does in a lake or a pond. Because it's flowing and moving, the algae blooms do not set up in flowing water because they just don't have time. They're moving too far and too fast downstream. The other thing is the amount of flow that comes out, the concentration of the water coming out of the pipe, if you were to draw off the bottom, is not all that different than the concentration of the phosphorus coming in to the lake from its tributary during stormwater runoff or from its storm drains during stormwater runoff. So what the lake is doing is really trapping and helping benefit the downstream by sort of being a storage spot. And all you're doing when you release it is you're timing the release, and you're ideally timing the release so that you're putting it out when the bottom water is at its phosphorus highest. You're sort of that summer stagnation period and you're drawing off from the bottom to release downstream. And the volume of water going down is not going to be all that much to boot. You know, it's a pretty small, I'm not saying it's the best solution, but it's a small amount of water going downstream and it's not particularly high in phosphorus compared to like the storm drains that come in everywhere to the river as well as to the lake. There's storm drains that are putting in 10 times what you're putting in from your bottom release outlet. So that's my opinion on it. It's not sludge going downstream. If you were to take the bottom sediment that's rich in phosphorus off the bottom of the lake, that becomes a dredging project. That's a different, you need a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers, you need a permit from DEEP, you'll need a 401 water quality cert. There's a whole bunch of things that have to happen. And that material, you need to know how much material you're taking, what's the concentration, not just of phosphorus, but every single other constituent that could be there. Cadmium, copper, chromium, lead, nickel, zinc, mercury, you know, PCBs, now PAHs, and every other chemistry compound has to be tested before that material can be removed from the lake and placed somewhere. Even if you're putting it in a lined landfill, you need to know what the concentrations are because some lined landfills can't even take it if it's too hot. So there's a lot of work that has to happen before you do something like that. Whereas an alum project, you don't have that issue.
Specific to siphon and deep water, that's number 2 we'll talk about, so we table that because we need Savannah involved in that. And Mark Walter, so we can explain what has happened to date in the last month and why there may or may not be a sense of urgency to do this now.
Is it possible, like a Band-Aid, to put a filtration system on some of our entries into the lake, like bags of carbon that you would put in an aquarium to kind of help clean?
Yeah, there are. They have filter socks that will do that. They have phosphorus logs, they call them phos logs that you can put in. The idea of a phos log is essentially it's releasing an alum-like compound to bind with the phosphorus. So it's not removing anything. It's just sort of treating it as it comes in. And that works well for a small pond, like if you had an ornamental pond on your property or a farm pond even. But it's not at the scale that you wouldn't really make a dent in it. A lot of lake management is
trying to shut down as more coming in until we figure out the overall plan.
Yeah, I have a lake I work on up in Worcester, Mass, where we've had this issue there. The watershed is extremely developed and the phosphorus coming in during storms is really high. And it's 60% of the flow comes in from one tributary that drains a whole big hillside of the city. And it's just, they can't fix the problem on the lot by lot basis it's just overdeveloped, too much impervious surface basically. And so we put in an alum dosing station, which basically is 2 large tanks of, it's actually polyaluminum chloride, which is neutral and buffered, so it doesn't have a pH impact. But we dose that so it's flow actuated. When the water goes up, the pumps turn on and it puts in alum to the tributary as it flows into the lake. And it's the 2nd year of operation for this system that we've done. And the first year went great. The 2nd year, the city's been running it and they ran it so hard this spring because there were so many storms, like it rained pretty much every weekend all spring. And they made the lake so clear that plant growth grew way out deeper than it had ever grown before because the water was so clear. And those plants then, it was a plant species that doesn't really need roots. And so they all started floating to the surface in rafts, big mats, and they got pretty upset about that. So you gotta, water clarity is one thing, but aquatic weeds are another. And so that's one of the things that as you manage your lake, you need to be
Any
aware.
ballpark cost for that?
Ballpark cost for the system?
Yeah,
It was about a $400,000 system, design and build, and then they spent like $100,000 on land and permitting and design. They had to get sort of a lot donated to them, and there was some legal costs associated with the transfer to the city. But it was so $500,000 for the system, and they spend about 40 to 60 on alum for the whole season. But that's a much bigger flow system than you would have. So it's a
Curious, how many acres is that, like, we're 280?
it's a similar size lake, but they have the flow through that lake is much higher than your flow. So they basically flush that lake about every 4 to 6 months. So they have a large volume of water coming through, and it's not as deep as your lake, and it's you know, it's a different system entirely, and it's very stormwater driven, whereas yours isn't. Stormwater is a big portion of the flow, but you are not flushing your lake. You don't have enough. Your watershed's much smaller than their watershed. So even though the lakes are the same, roughly the same size, you're pushing a lot less water through your big lake than they are. So your cost would be lower.
And like we dump about 1/3 of our volume every winter. So how much phosphorus you think that takes out? It's replaced next summer by runoff, so it's probably equal, right?
Yeah.
But we drop by at least 1/3 when we go down 6 feet.
Yeah.
That's
You
gotta
do.
help.
It doesn't make a difference. It's sort of an equal. You're basically drawing off right now. You're taking surface water, which is relatively clean, and draining it off in the fall.
That's the issue.
So when we have a turnover, the temperature is the same and that causes an even mix. Does that influence the amount of phosphorus top to bottom also?
Yeah, it increases the surface phosphorus a little bit. Yeah, when you
So
get
by the end of the year, we're more likely to get more than if you drained off in the summer. With a full lake.
yes, we need to do a
If
drawdown
we're in
midsummer.
the lake turnover, when we open the dam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we usually are.
Well, except it may then go to have us look at the timing of the lake drawdown.
Yeah.
Is the, maybe have it earlier than later.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
The pipe.
Yeah.
This
I wouldn't.
Down the pipe, yeah.
I know you had one question, but I'd like to.
Did everyone else get to?
I have another question.
Sure.
Is that all right? Well,
Sure.
yeah, this is a chart that
Right.
is included in this
Correct.
survey, but I don't understand it at all. There's a line here that I think misleading and showing that that's where we're gonna be going. I'm not sure if this should be included in
Carl,
this thing.
David is referring to the phosphorus loading equal 202 kilograms per year. And where we currently are, what is the yellow line 240 and the red line 479? I'm not sure why we wouldn't include this, because
Well, because
it's instrumental to them.
it's only showing it's not our lake, it's showing where the bad things come and that's a
Yeah.
curve where it goes.
No, this chart's specific
Well, where
to
do we
your
get the
lake.
479 from?
Carl?
So,
That-
yeah, I can explain. If we did a report probably in 2022 that summarized all of our loading analysis. This comes right from our hydrologic and nutrient budget modeling. And when we modeled the lake, based on the shape of the lake and the flow that moves through the lake is able to handle up to 240 kilograms of phosphorus per year before it starts to suffer from decreasing water clarity. At which point, when it gets up to 479, you're not going to get, you can add more phosphorus to the lake above 479 and the clarity will not get worse, but it's already bad. So that's, they say the yellow line is what's called the permissible load and the 479 is the critical load, but actually those terms I don't like to use. Those are modeling terms more than anything else. The loading, basically, we have lakes when I do studies where they're far above that 479 number. And it helps you understand where your lake is before you see the benefit. So if you're above 479 and you need to cut your phosphorus to start to see benefits, if you're at 500, you just need to cut it a few, 20, 30, 50 kilograms, and you're going to start to see improvement. But if you're at 800 kilograms per year, you need to cut it in half before you start to see that benefit. And that's all this chart shows.
So
Conversely,
this is a chart. This doesn't actually show what we have in lake. It's what the worst case scenario would be if we had so much phosphorus. So I don't know if it's a good chart to have.
202 is currently what's in the lake.
Right, so we have the chart showing 202, maybe we're going up, but we're not shooting
it's
up.
not
This is-
showing
isn't
any
it showing
directional
that where
movement
we're
at all.
at?
No directional movement in this chart at all.
No, we should have a level line showing where
There's
we.
no, you're exactly one dot at 202. We measured it in 2022 at 202. If we measured it this year, it might be 208. It might be 220. If we measure it and go back in the historical data, we might find that it's moved around that 202 number 10%, one way or the other each year, where you have some years that are a little better, some years are a little worse. When you get years where it bumps over this 240 number, i.e. the loading to the lake gets over 240, that's when you're going to see those spikes in algal bloom problems and the higher phosphorus levels that we saw in the chart that I included in that report, where you see those spikes for, I think it's like 6 or 8 years worth of data over a course of 35 years. Those were probably years where you were above that 240 loading rate. For whatever reasons, there was a new farm field, someone did some spreading, someone put in a new road, whatever their issue was, additional loading occurred. It could be atmospheric deposition or more storm events. So this chart is just a snapshot of the lake, and it's just telling people where you are. If you were in between those two lines, any change in phosphorus to the lake would be either negative or positive, and you would see a significant change in water clarity from those changes in phosphorus loading.
I just want to make sure no one thinks that's what's happening, because
That's
usually you get graph.
And I think we talked about it afterwards. I think everybody else is happy with the
All right.
chart. You make your.
Yeah, there's no dates on that chart, whereas all the other charts we put into that report have time. And so when you start to see Columbia Lake total phosphorus loading over time, the chart has a red line through it going up slightly. And so you could project over time where it might be in, say, 10 or 20 years to get a sense of where you're heading. But you have the ability to fix that too. So it's just
Okay.
Thank you.
Projected.
Thank you, Henry. I have what might be a naive question. It's directed, well, first of all, Carl, you're aware because you've addressed it in your report that one of the questions we got from planning and zoning at their meeting was how do we assess the value of nutrient allocation? Has it helped? And you've tried to address that in your report, but one, maybe not easy, but one way to do this, and I need Savannah to comment on if this is well, you can both comment on if it's worth doing, but there's a finite number of nutrient allocation worksheets, right? Because it went into effect in 2003. So everybody that's done any improvement work on their property that's subject to nutrient allocation, there's a worksheet for them, and it shows on it what you're starting at and how much you need to reduce the phosphorus load. So is it worth doing the mathematical exercise of adding up, getting I don't know if those are available digitally, if they've been scanned, or if they're sitting in a drawer somewhere. And frankly, Savannah, I have no idea how many nutrient allocation worksheets there are in those 22 years that we've been doing it. But it seems it would be relatively straightforward if we had access to them to just add them up. What, we know what we took out, what the nutrient allocation required removal of. Can we estimate what the starting point was and have actually a quantitative number that says this is what the phosphorus on these properties would have been had we not done nutrient allocation?
You want me to tackle that one?
I can speak to a little bit of the logistical stuff. So I will say, Muffy, I probably get like 4 per month that I need a nutrient allocation plan on a high month. Like maybe less, maybe like 2 to 4. I love the idea because I think it would be nice to back check the data too and see the effect and kind of our trends. It'd be great to kind of plot that out. The only issue I could see is, since I've been with the town, I've been saving them in a certain area in electronically. Otherwise, they all go into the street files. So there would be some kind of legwork tracking all the ones before my time that are kind of in just street files that I'd have to track down, and I'd have to figure out, oh, did they apply for a permit this year? Would they have needed a nutrient allocation plan? Go find it, scan it, whatever. So some man hours involved, but I do think it's an interesting idea. I would like to see the correlation.
Carl wants to comment, so maybe he's gonna say it wouldn't be worth doing anyway, I don't know.
I probably would say that. The challenge as a lake manager, one of the challenges we always have is you want to convey the right thing to do, which is infiltrate stormwater, create, all the types of things to infiltrate and reduce pervious surfaces. As a developer or as a planner or as someone reviewing plans, that's the right thing to do. And the more you understand it and the people doing it understand the benefit and the value, the more likely it gets adopted. The problem is 90% of these things aren't maintained the way they're supposed to be maintained. And this goes for everything from town designed infrastructure to, private homeowners. Property changes hands, the new people don't know what to do. And so over the long term, these types of small solutions tend to be less effective and become less and less effective over time. And so unless you're doing real things like saying, we're not going to make the driveway 200 feet, we're going to move the house and make it 100 feet. That's a structural, real, solid reduction in pervious surface. But if you just say, well, we're going to collect the runoff from the driveway and put it into a swale, well, that's nice. But at some point, that swale becomes less effective and actually becomes a conveyance of phosphorus-rich water to the tributary or the drainage that ultimately ends up in the lake. So it's a matter of care and how well they're. So I think if you were to track and tally all the things that people have done and said, well, each one of these removed 0.5 kilograms of phosphorus, and you found out that you removed 300 kilograms of phosphorus, I could tell you that's great, but you still have 200 kilograms of phosphorus coming into your lake every year. So, and the data that we see, the phosphorus data over time, isn't showing a decrease at all. It's showing it pretty flat, which is, to be honest, a huge credit. That's a good thing that phosphorus hasn't increased in your watershed over time. And I would attribute that to the nutrient allocation worksheet approach more than
That's a super important point. So what we don't know, and that's why that was what was behind my question, what the slope of that line would have looked like if we hadn't done nutrient allocation.
right.
So to your point, Carl, and I'm fearful if people are looking for a way to deregulate and make life easier around town, that's an obvious target I will tell you, we built our house in 2005, so nutrient allocation was a relatively new concept at the time, and we were kind of mind-boggling at being told, you know, how many square feet of mulch beds we needed to have, and how big our driveway could be, and we have 17 infiltrators in our yard, going from, because we're down slope of the road and our driveway. All the hoops we had to jump through, and maybe unlike some others, we've been very careful to maintain that, but I want to, and I think you know this from a comment Mary passed on from me on your report, be careful, not careful, but try to, whatever we can do to support the nutrient allocation is a worthwhile endeavor. And then it has had a benefit for us. I want to try to do.
The reason, the extent we can attribute keeping it flat to that is a benefit, but Carl, you raised the question that I was gonna raise. We've been doing this for, 20 some years. Should we have, as part of our plan, a study of requiring maintenance requirements? The same way we're gonna focus on septics and whatnot, maybe education is the best way to get started, rather than having people worry about a whole series of snooping inspectors coming to see whether they've cleaned out their infiltrator or not. But at least to do something to educate people on maintenance to move in the right direction.
Yeah, I think rather than study, I think it's pretty easy to step into education, and the challenge will be getting people to want to be educated. So that's the gap that I don't know how you bridge. That's very tough. And if you have a strong lake association, that's the place to start, where you can educate the people that care the most. And have a if you have an annual meeting, you have a topic where that's where you talk about some of the infiltrators and what care is needed. And that's not something you need to hire a consultant for. That's something that it would be great if it was one homeowner or two homeowners that have these devices and have been maintaining them and understand the value, that they could present at the meeting and give people some ideas of, boy, I tried this and this worked great, but when I did this, it clogged up terribly. And, just some hands-on firsthand experience with what works and doesn't work. And then, going forward, maybe people, when they adopt things, will adopt, if they're going to do a project or expand or need something, they will pick the ones that they know either don't require a lot of maintenance or the maintenance is easier, and they'll pick the ones that they will be more likely to maintain. So
that's a good point. We should have that education right up front to talk about maintenance requirements for each of the choices.
Yeah, two thoughts specific to that. Connecticut Federation of Lake, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, I still have the information, created a program called Lake Smart Homes. And they allowed, here's the criteria, which included maintenance, nutrient allocation, et cetera. And if you pass that criteria, you got a little sign. And then you were published as, these are people who are really helping to keep the lake smart and protect the lake. So something to consider for the future. Generally speaking, this is the third draft. This draft needs to go back to the town planner sooner than later, since we're about a week late. I'd like to catch up with planning and zoning on this. The first draft focused on exactly what they asked for. What are we doing well, which this says, and what do we need to continue to work on, which this says. We then just added PRC's data because that's what P and Z wanted. They wanted to see the data. What are we doing well and what do we need to work on? So I would just like to ask the group if you have any edits. I actually sent the first one out, we got edits from 2 or 3 people. How do we best move forward? Because we should be getting this to P and Z before the next meeting, which I believe might be next Monday.
For example, on page 8, where we have the recommended solutions and estimated costs.
Yes,
I would add, now I had maintenance, but I would add a bullet about develop an educational program around maintenance and, nutrient allocation.
correct.
And, I was curious why we weren't talking about geese here. And maybe Carl said, will tell us the geese is small compared to, what was coming in through the storm drain, but they don't seem small to the people that are chasing them.
Not today, there were 50 on the lake today.
For an hour.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. I can certainly update the table to include
Put in the
education on the maintenance. One thing that just popped into my head, just to get back to that, is that lakes, do you guys charge a fee for membership to the Lake Association? Or is there
Nominal.
$20 for membership.
20 bucks? So I'd say you go up on your fees and say to go to 30 and say, but if you're a Lake Smart Home certified, we'll keep you at 25. And so it's not a lot of money, but it gives you a reason to incentivize people. You get a $5 discount on your annual fee. You know, something like that. As far as the geese go, the geese, it's 1 kilogram of phosphorus per goose per year, roughly. So if you have 100 geese that are only there for 30 days, then it's, you know, you have to do the math, but if you had 100 geese that lived there year round, it's 100 kilograms of phosphorus. It's a big fraction of your 200. But if you have 100 geese that only show up for a week or two, then it's not so bad.
Yeah, but if we have 30 that are there 24/7, you know, that's a significant number.
Yeah, it's a question of how many days of the year are they there.
10.
Per year, 1 kilogram per year per goose.
I'm sorry.
1 kilogram per goose per year.
Yeah.
We had 29 this year, so you had 30 year. 30 goats, 1 month says 30 kilograms.
30 kilograms from 30 geese that were there year round.
Yeah,
Anything that comes in now is transient.
we're not.
I would say 30 is probably a rough ballpark number today.
So then 30.
Yeah, so we've worked with folks that have done worked to discourage geese from being sort of resident geese. Those are the ones you really have to worry about more than the migratory geese. And the challenge with that is, you know, it's part of it is land ownership and maintenance of that buffer between the grassy area and the lake. If you've got a nice grassy area that slopes gently to the lake, the geese can come and go in and out of the lake freely, and they hang out on the lawn and defecate, and then it washes into the lake. The solution is you either put up a fence line that prevents the geese from having easy access back and forth between the lake and the shore. They're lazy and they don't want to have to fly over a 3-foot high fence, basically. Some people will put, which is even better, is a little berm and a shrub row. That's a couple foot of shrubs and a berm, and that helps infiltrate the lawn into the ground before it gets to the lake, plus has the added benefit of discouraging geese from being on your property. If you have half the homes with nice sloping lawns to the lake, then the geese are going to be spread out across all of those lawns, and we'll use them, you know, some more than others, but essentially they find the easy path. But as more and more people take up the management of putting in fence lines or buffer rows of hedges and things, the geese find the easy path, which is the homeowner that hasn't done it, and they end up with a lot of geese and a lot of defecation on their lawn.
You're describing what we faced, and we faced for a bunch of years, but I think we need a placeholder here that deals with geese, because the problem hasn't gone away. We've made dents in it. But it could also get worse if we get more resident geese because of the change of the environment, and we're talking about 10 years here. So we need a placeholder to be able to point to that we gotta do something about.
So keep it in.
Geese, yes,
Yeah.
I would put it in, but I would put it on page 8 under recommendations and estimating.
You gotta put it in the table.
Oh, okay, got it.
But if it's 30 kilograms per year, and that's the second highest.
So Carl, should we redo that table to include geese management for 30?
No. So the problem is what we have accomplished is we've basically taken a snapshot from the lake, what's in the lake currently, and divided it up by the sources that how it gets there via water. So the geese are a component of stormwater, and it's captured in the water quality that we test from runoff coming from the watershed into the lake. So we could, you should see, if you educate people on geese, you put in some things that discourage geese, you could even get into addling eggs or oiling eggs and preventing them from having resident populations over time. Those things aren't going to be high cost. And if you start to see improvement, you should see your stormwater quality and your runoff quality getting better over time.
Well, then I would just suggest we mention geese in the storm water runoff area, so we have a place to point to geese, because then we can come back and say this year it was 30 kilograms. If it becomes 70 kilograms, we can say it's in the plan, we gotta do something about it.
Do you want to break the 30 kilograms out of the stormwater number?
No, I wouldn't, I would just put an asterisk and say inclusive of geese. You know, the more we gotta, that is helpful to educate people who like to feed the geese because they're pets, or that they have a right to be here too. And they do have a right to be here, but it's an overpopulation problem. And it's hurting the rest of, including humans, the rest of the organisms in the environment to have that many geese here. And so we need to try to recreate a natural balance.
Just for the heck of it, how much do ducks produce?
None.
None.
None. So the difference between ducks and geese are the ducks feed in the lake and poop in the lake. Geese mostly don't feed in the lake. They feed in fields and, you know, they're land-based foragers, and then they come to the lake and crap. So,
Well, then you poop in our yards too.
right. Well, and then it runs into the lake. So that's the problem with geese, is that they're just like fish aren't a source of loading to your lake, but they defecate in the lake, you know.
What
It's-
about pets?
Pets are a source. So people that do not, if you leave it in your yard, it's running into the lake over time. It's a source of phosphorus that's unmitigated. If you, I had, my wife's in the other room, she'll hear this, but her father used to pick up his dog waste and dump it into the storm drain on the edge of the street, you know, thinking he was doing something to fix the problem. You know, and didn't really realize that, oh, that actually doesn't go to the sewer, it goes to the stream, and the stream goes to the lake. So some of that is proper, you know, again, that's education. It's an educational component on how to manage pet waste. If there's a dog park, those often are a huge hot spot for a watershed where you've got everybody's dog doing their business. Even if only 5% don't pick it up, it's active source. So
Let's put where we put the asterisk in for geese, let's put pets there too, because I know that people.
well, it's also lawn fertilizer, it's car washing, it's.
Let's be proactive to deal with.
So it might be more accurate to put in a descriptor of kind of the stormwater discharge that includes geese, pets, things like that, because you said it's all included in that.
Lawn
correct? The stormwater
fertilizers,
runoff.
yard waste management,
Is included from.
car washing.
Suggestion.
Are we done with that, or we?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is everybody comfortable that with these changes, we can submit this as a draft?
One more change on the, where you have the money chart,
Money. Yeah,
cost chart, I would go 2025 cost,
oh, okay,
because this is going into a document that's gonna be there for 10 years.
yeah. So that's
It's still-
2025 off. estimates. Okay,
And one question for Savannah, do we anywhere in this define where we do nutrient allocations, what zones? Is it only A1, or do we do it as far as the entire watershed? All three.
all three.
Okay,
1900
and personal wet.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the current regulation.
You have comments on the site and thing where you're saying we're gonna take that up separately or something?
That's the next thing. It's a beautiful bridge. Henry.
Okay, well, because then I might come back and make a
But
comment
if
here.
you want to back and put it in.
Just, as a comment, somebody mentioned planning and zoning. There is a movement within, planning and zoning to simplify, eliminate to some extent, make it easy, make the regulations easier. So I think we need to really hold on to the nutrient allocation plan. I don't think we need to make it any more difficult, because I think then there's gonna be pushback. But, we should try to hold on to that, it's obviously.
Absolutely.
When you say easier, you mean easier to apply, easier to,
You know,
Like,
just not doing.
like,
There's the,
adopt a using
Qualify.
plan, no zoning.
right,
Mhm.
there's some people who would like those on the so.
You want comments?
That's what you mean by
either team?
Well, no, easier to understand, there's
Can
some
I get them?
sections of planning
Yeah,
and
Certain strategies.
regulations.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And while I wanna.
Yeah,
John wrote.
We can make some.
Well, you can't have the llama thing.
Yeah,
Also,
also to
I
eliminate.
think we should, potentially hone down.
Okay, can you and I do
Yeah.
that separately?
Yeah, I mean,
First,
put wording in to cover the concept,
yes,
not be as blatant.
okay. Oh, I think I tried to make that even stronger.
Well, no, I do think we wanna do that, but we don't wanna irritate the camp either.
Yeah, I get
And,
it. Sure.
and, so, but just to speak to that a moment, I was thinking of putting something in, like saying, recommend the town seek to support the continued wise ecological use of Camp Asawama, and its, lake property. So that we're, basically that would also allow us to buy right away, but it also is more proactive so that we can help them with any kind of, environmental activities or whatever that they're doing, so it becomes a cooperative effort. And rather than looking like we're hunting for them
Okay,
and trying to drive them into the grave.
excellent. Thank you, Henry. That may be one action, but that overall general strategy is what.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Good job, Mary, that was.
Yeah, great job.
Well, and kudos, thank you, Carl. We
Yes,
can
thank
make
you,
a
Carl.
couple minor adjustments.
You're
Carl,
welcome.
hang on, Savannah's turn. I was called into a meeting with Walt, Tabor, Mark, Savannah, I forget who else, that's it. And a unique concept came to fruition, as a proposal. It has not obviously been.
John, yes.
Yeah, so here's the deal. In December, Carl presented to us a siphon pipe. Small pipe, siphon, spillway, et cetera. We've had a little discussion on that. Walt Tabor, who is a civil engineer, I guess, by trade, which I didn't realize, has made a second recommendation. And he was excited to do it and do it like by the drawdown, which may or may not occur. But it is an interesting concept. His concept is, and I'm sorry, the PowerPoint was supposed to be a part of it, there are actual pictures which I'll send to you, well, I sent it to you all last night. We know the siphon, we've seen that forever from Portman, et cetera, over the spillway. This is to attach to the dam pipe that's in the middle of the lake, a pipe that is secured and then goes down to the bottom, sits on a concrete platter. Savannah, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this. And we now always siphon from the bottom of the lake. Not even just the drawdown, but if we had to open because we're at +4 and rain's coming, or we're at whatever. So, the town has already talked to the engineers who did
Yeah,
the.
we're waiting for Walt, I talked to Walt just the other day, he was gonna tweak his plans a little more and then get him to WMC, which is
That's the engineer.
There it is, so. WMC has been evaluated as well, so we're sending it to TRC and WMC, the damage unit.
Now, is it gonna be a sealed system, so all of the water comes down, or is it just gonna be partially sucked?
What Walt was saying is gonna be an 18-inch pipe, since that's the maximum that we.
The diameter, okay.
We don't ever open more than 18 for the safety of the
Correct,
gate,
And we don't wanna lose anything.
but the
here.
pipe going to the gate is much bigger.
30 inches, 30 inches.
So that's. Picture kind of looks like it's equal.
Yeah, but it's the,
So I don't know how that works, there's
I don't know
no
how that would work.
flex or connected, but the engineers are.
what we need to be sure of is that we're not losing the ability to remove as much water per minute, per second, or whatever,
Correct,
by reducing the diameter. And because I can also see that this is like a straw, there can be leaking around the side.
yeah,
Can suck from the bottom through the 18-inch pipe, but still have water coming in to the weir at the 30-inch thing, because what's pulling it from the bottom is the fact that the Venturi principle or whatever, Venturi principle, the water's just going by, and so it's creating a suction, and it's gonna suck some off of the bottom, but it
And then
doesn't
some.
necessarily reduce create a risk where we reduce the amount that we can get out in an emergency situation,
So
so.
like having a hole in your fuel.
You need a wide.
Yeah,
So would this be
Wide
a
30-inch.
Would this be a second drain?
yeah.
Or.
It would still be the one drain that goes to the gate. We're just extending it to the lowest part of the.
right, and what I would like to suggest we do, rather than talk about it being a siphon or anything else. What I put at the dam, return to removing water from the bottom of the lake.
Correct,
And that was the recommendation that I put in, take out talking
Okay.
about siphon, we're just gonna go back to what we were doing. When the first dam a gate was built.
Walt talked about making it a 3-year temporary test to calm everybody down, that we could remove it if it
yes,
doesn't work ideally as we plan.
Well,
It's
but
not permanent.
yeah, but
that's kind
that's
of
fine.
island or.
But what we need to make sure that we have at least a comfort level that if we've got, a. Rainstorm and a hurricane and the water level's 2 feet over the wall. That we can get as much water out as we could have.
There's a lot more down there than just a pipe now, I mean, there's 3, like septic tank sizes.
That's what
That
I'm
you
saying.
have to go through.
Like,
Where they have holes in the side where the water comes in.
That's what I'm saying,
And
is
if one of them is separated.
if that is left open, so you
Yeah.
can take both ways, but it can go several ways, but it just needs to be double checked.
I don't know how they join it together.
Henry, if I may, when we had a discussion with the engineers that we were considering working with, they suggested actually a second pipe would probably be a better idea. Because then that could be turned off and on at, if there's time of year restrictions, it wouldn't impede on what you were talking about with the, releasing water from the lake in the drawdown. So I guess that's another option that they felt was probably maybe a better idea. It would still go out to the same spillway and kind of wash through and hopefully infiltrate.
What about the thermocline? Chick was saying that this would only work if you have a thermocline, and otherwise there's too much mixing.
Like
The surface phosphorus is not gonna be any different from the bottom.
Well, but at that time, if the thermocline is gone and if there's mixing, you've at least got more mixed in as opposed to the top where, in the summertime, our clarity comes because all the phosphate gets used up, eaten by algae, the algae dies and sinks to the bottom. In the fall, when it mixes up again, there's more phosphate, yes, it's not as much as locked in the bottom, so ideally, we would use the bottom drain in August when we're already down 4 inches, but we're not gonna do it that time of year.
Thank you.
That
Because-
time is
My pride,
raining.
thanks you.
Yeah, because of the fact we wanna have it, so I mean, it's not gonna be something that's used to remove phosphate at its highest concentration. But
Unless we change the dates
Of the drawing.
of the drawing.
I
Right.
think a better idea might be whenever we've got water going over the overflow, you might wanna be able to open.
yes,
that.
exactly.
That's when it
That's-
makes sense.
What we should be doing is if in the middle of July, we're at +4 and there's gonna be a 2 inch rain, we don't open the
Yeah,
wheel, we
exactly.
open the siphon.
Exactly.
That's when it makes sense.
Yes.
That's potential.
Yes.
So,
Can I ask you we were discussing this somewhat with the engineers. The pipe would have to be in sort of the deepest portion of the lake to collect the most phosphorus, right? Or how would that
No.
work? Like,
Right in front of the dam.
Yeah.
could I have Carl comment on that? Because
yeah, it
that's-
doesn't have to be at the deepest part.
Within 50 feet to 75 feet of it where it is.
Yeah. Carl,
And how deep is that, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be at the deepest part. It just has to be below the thermocline, ideally, a foot or two off the bottom. And if you look at your bathymetry map, you're not going to be right near the dam. You're going to have to extend it kind of a good distance away from the dam to get there,
mhm.
because your thermocline kind of runs at 20 feet-ish. And you need to get below that. So whether you're 2 feet below it or 6 feet below it, you're in the area that's basically anoxic, and it's
It's not that, you don't have to move far away to get to 25.
We used to do the second just.
according to my vote,
yeah, take a look at the bathymetry map and how far it is from the dam, and then you'll have a real good idea on what the
That's how far. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
so I think LMAC needs to be aware of this. I think as it evolves, whether it be a siphon over the spillway or a pipe connected somehow or a second pipe, Savannah we're work on a proposal of some sort that we should review and plus or not.
Yeah,
You
and
got
keep
all
in
of it.
mind that precast concrete's gonna disappear.
But
Excuse me, Carl?
That precast concrete slab is not gonna sit on the bottom, it's gonna disappear. It's gonna sink
Oh,
beyond.
sick.
yes, yeah,
Oh,
walking away, yeah,
It's
So
not
yeah,
like there's not a hard bottom in your lake.
yeah,
it's very stocky soft.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you won't be able to tell where the bottom starts and the lake begins.
Right.
so is there a solution to that?
Yeah, you basically would use a big anchor and a chain going up to the inlet pipe, and then a buoy that suspends that pipe underwater. So it would be a
Floating pipe.
floating pipe that basically is suspended above the bottom by a buoy that's holding it up out of the bottom so that you're not sucking mud and getting it clogged. And so you would you'd need it high enough, and you'd want to be able to add links to it if you needed to over time as that anchor continues to sink into the mud.
Interesting. Savannah, you caught that, I hope.
What's that?
You got that, I hope.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to write down.
For our recommendation, I'd like to, we can talk about a site on a site, but I'd like to talk about returning to removing water from the bottom of the lake.
Correct.
So that we make
General,
generally and make it clear that we're not doing something new.
correct.
So we have that argument when we go to the state.
But it's not at the bottom, it's below 22 feet,
Yeah, well, but we presently,
because that's the bottom. That graph. Yeah, you want, bottom's 28, so all you need to do is.
well,
Bottom's
we can say,
Change his words.
we can say to the same depth we were withdrawing from.
The
before.
similar depths or,
Similar depth than we were drawing before, because the base of the gate is down 28 feet of the stone pier.
return to removing water from. Similar depth.
And that gate probably sought the muck out And
Correct.
a hole that was deeper than anywhere
Yes,
else.
yeah. Well, the pipe will likely suck the muck out
Yeah,
too.
Good.
We just need to make, well, the present pipe, the present system probably sucks.
I would suggest not stating that. If you're gonna try to get a permit, don't state that you're gonna suck the mud from the bottom of the
Oh,
pond
that's
and
right.
discharge
Thank
it downstream.
Then we have to go through Army Corps.
You have all sorts of water quality certs and everything else that you're gonna have to get because there's gonna be a turbidity issue and they'll have you monitoring your discharge.
Well, I just want to applaud Walt Tabor for
Yeah.
coming up with the concept and idea, because we've been struggling with this for a couple of years. It's, every little bit helps, and if we can make this work, and Carl has even said that, it might not be a lot, but every little bit's gonna help. And there's a lot of hypotheses for those who've lived here 30 to 50 years that when we took it off the bottom is when we started to have issues, so let's get back.
Okay,
Thank you, Savannah. And Carl.
Absolutely. I'll keep you posted on everything.
Anything else related to this?
No, I think you guys,
You'll see you tomorrow, Savannah?
Yeah, I think
So,
since we're gonna have an opportunity to look at it again,
right,
it's good to move
the
forward.
third issue is on clasping pondweed
Oh.
and the growing issue of nuisance native plant. A chart, just to do the research, and Savannah and I have been kind of working on this. Savannah did a terrific job with the pilot program and has actually presented the information in a very research oriented way. Lovely, Savannah. And then we talked about what can we do? I don't think we have to make decisions tonight. We're educating people that you shouldn't do anything right now, or if you do, the seeds will spread, they'll become denser. But these are all the methods that I could find in research. And we're gonna, at some point, I think, come back to Carl and Savannah and say, what's best for this lake? There are those who want to, on their own, apply herbicides. There are those who want to, they don't care and rake whenever. And I think we have to continue the education, and we have to come up with what's best for this lake. Carl, I know it's 11% or 30 acres of plant, which is pretty damn good number for any lake. Greater than 25 plants gets bad or starts to. The bottom line is, it's where it is. And I'm seeing kind
It's
of,
growing.
everybody's seeing it, it's becoming more dense and it is growing. I'll be curious to see the official plant mapping when it's all done. Because, I mean, I don't blame people who see this right as they're jumping into the water. It has gotten denser even towards our area, which is, we're probably now 10 feet from it, so I figure by next year we'll end it.
I think. Coming back to what we just left, I think we need to put some kind of placeholder in the 10-year plan
Okay,
for dealing with, nuisance native organisms, because anybody who's has it in front of their property, anybody at the beach who swam through it or whatever is gonna say, why aren't you doing something about it?
yeah.
So I think we need it, we may not have a cost, we may not have a plan, but we need to,
Well, it's a downside of what we're facing with the phosphorus load.
yeah, well, and so we should put in, something about, continue to study and, develop a management plan. Because we're not gonna get rid of it, so we're talking about a management plan.
Exactly. Mark was looking at a suction and I saw the cost and I went, oh.
Oh, I never saw, what was the cost for?
Up to $45,000 in a like much smaller.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
For doing the whole
Okay,
thing.
we'll talk about that someday.
Mary, on the mechanical removal, the first one,
I mean,
the first category, mechanical removal, in your chart,
oh, yeah,
under con, if you put something in there about how it's really irritates the neighbor when somebody does it and they don't collect what they're raking up. And all the stuff kind of floats over to the neighbor's property and drops off the sides.
Carl has a solution for you. I sent him that.
Yeah, just gather.
There's an actual net that can help collect, so
Yeah,
that you
you-
don't need a strand.
No,
It
no, I
doesn't-
collect, I just throw it back over the counter.
Oh, I know.
Sure.
I have one of those.
I will.
Well, but sometimes it's coming across the lake, somebody's doing it across the lake, the
Yeah.
one's driving it, so.
Yeah, they make,
Program's gonna be how you collect this.
We're doing it with, our motorboats and.
Well, that's-
This,
No, the
this
neighbors
week,
are doing it with the damn brake, excuse me.
this week at the sailing club meeting, we actually joked about the fact that we gotta watch where we're sailing. Because we could pick it up on our centerboards and slow us down.
Well, not the pondweed, I'm seeing strands of it come on our shoreline, but the Eladia, we've had wheelbarrows full that we've taken
Yeah,
over this year.
me too.
And that happens like 10 years ago it happened. I mean, that plant's been here forever. Chick Chifrin mentioned to us, Eladia was the issue 30 years ago. Now it's classed in pondweed. But you're right, it should be included in the overall 10-year plan. And then we can come back and say, excuse me, what are we gonna do moving forward?
Weed patrol.
Yeah,
I'm dead serious.
You gotta be careful, because someone people, you know, actually for being
No, but
close to
it would be as we work through, the details, have an official group of folks that can come out and assess and possibly take care of it.
Well, that's,
So you have.
our wetlands agent is the leader of
Yeah.
that, based on her role and responsibility and the wetlands regulations. LMAC advises, we can't
Right.
implement, but I love the concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Jimmy Santos wants to take a weed whacker and just go through that.
Yeah.
And other people want for herbicide.
Yeah, I know.
You look at all of the little yellow flowers that are up there that are no bigger than a Q-tip.
Yeah.
And you wonder how many more seeds we're gonna see and plants we
Yeah.
see next year, because there are more flowers this year than we've ever seen before.
So we'll work with Savannah, Carl will give us input as needed, but Savannah, the pilot program. Worked, it had some issues in terms of breaking and cutting, and with this chart. What's best for Columbia Lake is what we have to figure out. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that, you can go on Facebook now and buy herbicide. We have to educate people that, you need a permit first, and what does that do to the lake ecosystem if we're not managing? The question I had for Carl is, at what point, or how do you determine when to remove pondweed? At what point does it impact the lake's ecosystem? Is there a fish now going through these? That's part of their.
well, yeah, so the answer is it's not impacting the ecosystem yet, and it generally, the definition is if it gets to be more than 25% of the lake area, it will start to impact the ecosystem. But recreation can be impacted with little or no plants. It all depends on where the plants are. If they're all growing at the public beach, then they're going to be impacting recreation. If they're at the boat launch, they're going to be impacting recreation. So it's you have to manage the plants where they're impacting people and not worry about the plants where they're not impacting people. And that's generally the most cost-effective approach. And you can do it with hand pulling, you can do it with bottom barriers, you can do it with the suction harvester that you had, or suction equipment that you had mentioned. But ultimately or herbicides, it's just a matter of what people's preferences are and what their appetite is for getting out and doing some of this work. So it's a pretty labor-intensive approach when you're hand pulling and raking and hauling stuff out of the lake. So as you
Well,
know,
we'll find out as we continue to work with Savannah and bring to LMAC. Here's our suggestions for next year. I think the pilot program overall was a success. How many people participated and actually did it, Savannah?
So I think I had 5 data points, maybe 6. It wasn't a huge, I was expecting more kind of people to reach out. So maybe getting ahead of it next year and advertising somehow a little better on the town webpage or at our meetings or whatever to get people involved. And starting earlier will be helpful. having kind of a better pool of data, having more people. I think once we see all that next year, we can see if this is going to be a long-term management strategy or if we have to think bigger. I would think that that would be a good
We only
direction.
have 2 weeks.
Yeah, there was only 2 weeks this year, right, Savannah?
Yeah,
We should
yeah,
have started
only
in
2
May, we started in July.
Start the education part before, I think.
Yeah.
Let's see, get ready.
Yes, I can get ready. Next one,
Yeah.
we start.
Announce the permits in March.
Yeah.
Who wants to,
yes.
here's when you can start, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, May is probably, from my experience, too early because it's not high enough. You can certainly effectively get to it, but it's more challenging when in
Mm.
June, it's high enough to get to.
Okay.
And
And it depends on where the water depth is in there,
correct.
or just,
Yeah. Well, but I mean, it's also how hard off the ground.
Correct.
It's easier to
Correct.
break it and cut it if you can get it twisted on something, so if it's
yeah,
18 inches tall, it's a lot easier to get out than if it's 6 inches tall.
Mhm.
And at 6 inches, you're gonna do more disaster to the lake bed trying to get it out than if it's a little higher.
yeah. So
Carl,
thank
if
you.
it's cut in if it's cut in like June, because I know that's maybe slightly less labor intensive than someone diving down and pulling them all by hand, which was effective, but isn't a big effort. If it's cut in June, will it seed? Will it regrow and seed in time, or is that an effective management method to like reduce the seeding?
Yeah, no, that'll take care of it
Okay,
For the season, it'll
for the
take care.
season.
for the season, yeah,
Greg Bugby has also said that, if you do it
because
in
then the
May.
roots will grow back, right, the next year.
There's seeds from the prior years, so the seed bank, basically, when a plant drops seeds, it's dropping seeds that will grow next year, the year after, and the year after that, so they generally are good for 3, sometimes even 4 years, and only a portion of them germinate each year. So
Mhm.
you're stripping the bottom of plant for year 1, and if you do it for 3-4 years in a row, you've depleted that seed bank in that location.
Okay,
And the
good to know
only thing they
timeline.
grow from the seed, the plant that's there today doesn't winter over and the roots don't do anything, it dies, it's an annual.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Reissues, Henry, thank you. Smile.
Thank you both, Carl.
Thank you.
And any further questions or of our?
I'd like to thank Mary for putting the good work together on a word.
Thank you, Mary. Once again, we thank Mary.
I love data analysis.
All
Research.
right, well, thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
We're Glenn Keegan has been waiting for.
I'm learning a lot here.
We're,
Jokingly thinking we gotta hire
given
many friends.
where we are on time, we'll look to try to abbreviate things, but audience of citizens is next.
I'm ready. I'd like to propose an idea, and it's strictly an idea at this stage.
Name and address.
Oh, sorry, my name's Glenn Keegan, 11 Newford Drive. All right. So my thought is, and we could involve it to be like maybe something like celebrating the lake, starting in June for the season. As most of you know, I have a wooden Chris craft along with Mary. And I would like to propose an idea. I'm sorry, Muffy, sorry.
Sirs. Michael, that's okay.
I belong to an antique boat association. And I'm curious if the lake manager would be interested in potentially bringing a couple of them in. Of course, we'd have to waive a few of the regulations as far as the resident and potentially the horsepower limit. But it would just be like a 1-day or afternoon event at the beach. You could potentially bring in a band, a food truck. People could come down, they could look at the boats. And we could also incorporate possibly, I know it's been talked about in the past with pontoon boats. Giving lake rides around the lake for people that don't have access to the lake. And any money that they donate could potentially go to a charitable donation like Make-A-Wish or whatever we chose.
Say the lake.
Well,
So it's just an idea at this point. I haven't gone anywhere with it because if it's got no legs, there's no sense of going with it anywhere with it.
I would suggest you take it up with the Lake Association. Because it's more of a. LMAC will have to weigh in on, and probably talk to the selectmen about the horsepower thing and the special exception, but the selectmen have that capability right now, but this is more of a, you know.
Well, I was told to bring it here, so that's why.
Well.
He's had some preliminary discussion with town officials and they suggested we start an LMAC. But I hear what you're saying, a CLA sponsor.
Right, because LMAC is more about the environmental, the regulatory. Protecting the lake, the ordinances, and the Lake Association is more about the social, the history. And so forth, and I think that LMAC would be willing, this is my personal opinion, obviously, would be willing to support the concept, but it's not, we're not in the business of being the recreation department, and doing these kinds of, public relation type things.
I think he's just after, would we have the appetite to recommend to the selectmen to waive
There you go.
the horsepower
Yeah,
and
that's the
the residents?
I think the devil's in the details.
Size.
Well,
Relative
yeah,
to that.
right, yeah, well, it's good to hear the issue. Selectmen have that power under the ordinance as it stands because the selectmen are allowed to waive it for reason, because the boats that can be put on the lake are all the ones that meet those horsepower and anything else that the selectmen say, and the selectmen would waive it, obviously, if Carl came out with something, or if we needed to have a 40-foot barge to pick up the pondweed, or something like that.
Oh, that's right. I hear what you're saying.
It would
It's in
be,
the ordinance.
it would be waived under the ordinance. Now, the selectmen may wanna ask LMAC whether it's a good idea, and we could certainly weigh in and support it at the time. I've also heard from the selectmen that they're gonna use that with the permission of the selectmen, approach as a way of dealing with issues that might have been grandfathered, but weren't. And so, with that is not gonna be a vestigial part of the ordinance, it's gonna be an active part of the ordinance, and it would certainly seem that this one-off type situation, even if it becomes one-off every year, would be, one that would, make sense and so forth.
So where does he go? I guess that's the question, right? So he's coming here to say, hey, are you guys open to the idea of if the selectmen come to us, which they probably would, to say, what do you think about waiving, these rules, regulations, are you open to it? I am. Do we vote, at least give them a preliminary vote to get working on it with CLA, or where do you go?
Move that, I would rather wait for them to come back with CLA and give us a
I think we need to
proposal,
know
what
the details.
what it is.
I mean,
Uh,
first off, you're talking Chris Crafts, maybe hackers. Way back then, you're not exceeding the horsepower. None of the woodies exceed the horsepower.
Well, it depends on the size.
No,
though. If you bring in a triple,
Yeah. If you're bringing in like whatever soccer, there might be an issue.
Well, I'm bringing it up in the event that you are correct, the majority of the Chris Crafts are under the.
our size.
But
Yeah.
our size, but there are, say for example, there's the gentleman that works on my Chris Craft. He has one that in his his barn that he's working on right now,
Mhm.
that I think it's 24 feet, it's got a triple cockpit, I guarantee that's over the horsepower restriction, okay? And
It's a good
I mean, that would be a phenomenal boat to see on the lake, obviously, we wouldn't want him to be roaring around the lake, but if he was to participate in a, you know, a parade and we're keeping it at, you know, lake speed or whatever, it would be a phenomenal boat to see on the lake. So I'm just saying, would we potentially waive the horsepower restriction if a few came in over the horsepower?
I think there have to be some specific, and you just mentioned one,
Right.
that you can't go full speed.
Right.
Cause
Well, the other thing is, we wouldn't wanna see it on the 4th of July weekend.
well,
You know,
My initial thought, just so it was, I don't wanna even interfere with the beach traffic, so I'd like to do it in early June.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, so the beach people haven't started to show up, but almost use it as, and again, going back, you're saying. CLA, okay, use it as an event to kick off the summer season down,
Well, can
It
we
sounds,
in conjunction with the town flyer, we just did a,
yeah,
something,
Yeah, the J,
but concert.
concert.
Yeah.
it seems to be something like the CLA, the rec department,
Right.
whatever. And because to ask you to do it on your own, when is a big lift. And I would assume you want help, if you're gonna find somebody, even if it's an ad hoc committee. But then, I think you've got a sense, unless somebody else wants to say otherwise, that there, you know. The idea isn't dead on arrival by any means.
Correct.
And I find and
Work appropriate.
you gotta just come back with kind of,
Right.
here's our pilot
We
plan.
can talk more, Glenn, and sketch this out a little bit more, how many boats it might be. I tried the pontoon, giving rides idea, that fell flat on its face, and, you know,
We
that's,
should revisit that.
I think we should too, but anyway.
Didn't Carly
The-
used to do that?
Well,
Privately,
He told me he
He
did
did it
it
just for
recently.
self, which was historic.
You gave rides on the lake, but did you do that from your own property or from the public?
What, rides on the lake?
Yeah,
Well, we did that for the church,
yeah,
yeah,
from the town beach,
from the beach, yeah.
Dick used to do it with LMAC members when we weren't
Yeah.
inspected properties.
That,
well, I got a laundry list of a liability issue, we have to sign our
Yeah.
lives away in order
Yeah.
to give rides to people.
Really?
Seriously,
Hold
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
hold on.
It's official.
Yeah, hold on was
it
agreed.
can't be.
It has to be, because you're taking friends out.
Well, and we couldn't do that in this context, but we can sketch out, Glenn, what it would look like.
I mean, yeah, that was just to build on the ideas, you know, like.
I love-
Well,
I love
we don't-
the
what we
idea.
don't have is a town dock that would support, like, when we go to boat shows, it's like a marina and they're all lined up, and we don't have the ability really to do anything like
And that's
that.
why I wanted to limit the amount of boats, because
Yeah.
we don't have a tremendous amount, you'd be lucky to get. I don't think we could get any more than 8 or 10 boats, and we currently already have 3 or 4, so we're not bringing in that many more. To begin with, so.
So we'll follow up with you.
Look at the camp docks, you know, maybe before the season, we could get permission from them to use their dock. No,
I'm dying.
You're gonna get half a dozen.
I think he still likes that.
Dog.
So
I'm gonna kind of.
Go ahead,
We're gonna lose our quorum.
oh,
No, I'm dialing.
Oh, you're dialing,
you gotta get home first.
okay,
You're thinking just.
Glenn.
I'm dialing right now.
thank you for this great idea. Have you gotten enough feedback from us, if you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, before I put any effort into it, I wanted to make sure it wasn't dead in the water, I mean, if it was like,
If you
no
have
way,
thumbs
no
up.
how, we're not doing it, you know, we're not gonna allow it, then there's no sense of.
And so as far as I understand, the process is in conjunction with CLA, you develop a program. I would imagine that the Board of Selectmen would look to us to go through the logistics of it and make a recommendation to the board.
Cause I've already spoke to him, and he recommended coming here, Steve.
Oh, Steve, right.
And he liked the idea, but he was like, start with LMAC, so that's why I didn't hear. So if your next suggestion is to go to CLA, I'll do that as well. And then I can sit down with Muff and we can come up with something.
Oh, I'll let you in, Mary, can you stay just?
Yeah.
2 minutes, because I think we've only got one other important piece of business, a very important piece of business. We want to fill a vacancy on LMAC, and I would like to nominate Frank Gifford to fill the vacancy created by Noreen Newfer. And Frank has attended a bunch of our meetings, and knows what we're doing, is very pro-lake and a great individual. I think would be a wonderful addition to LMAC. And so I am putting his name in a nomination for that. Any discussion?
I think he's a great candidate, and for those who don't know, he has a ton of experience on another lake, Bantam Lake, which is, I think, really super helpful, so it's not just Columbia Lake.
We don't like John Rule.
Is there a procedure for it, both in a selectman, or can we do a recommendation? Got it. You can make the recommendation,
Yeah, right. So I'll amend my motion to say that we make a recommendation to the selectmen that they appoint Frank. And if any further other discussion or suggestions?
I second motion.
Okay, that's all in favor?
I do another item.
Okay, but let's say, let the minutes say it was unanimous when we recommended to.
There, before you,
We look forward to having everybody see you.
before you go, is there any permit review?
Now, Mike, you withdrew yours,
Just one of them,
Just
the
one.
top one is still.
and we get to it, we have to do a site visit first. We have to do a site visit on Mike's, and we are on hold, and I'm sorry, Savannah isn't here. I'll discuss it with her and discuss it with you. The permit for 4 Sunny Slopes, the owner would not allow us on the lake to do a site visit, on his property to do a site visit, unless the town is willing to pay $500 for 5 minutes of being on that property to review something they did without a permit. And every minute after that is $150. So obviously.
Is it rent or something? Rent? What's the basis for the charge?
What's the basis for why he won't allow us?
Why do I must charge?
I'm sorry,
Why is he wants, how is he thinking he's charging money for it?
I don't know.
Right, well, can we inspect it from the water?
No,
Could we?
no.
No, okay.
That's
So,
not-
it's on hold, that's the only permit that I'm aware of, Savannah Kitchen has taken it over, Mark, I don't know if anything's been done yet.
On that 4 Sunny Slopes, should the owner be notified that the approval is on hold?
Well, there's no approval, and at wetlands, I would believe next Monday there will be no approval. I can't speak for all of IWWC, but
Does applying for a permit create an opportunity to go there? I mean, does that, how can you apply for a permit and say you can't come?
That's the point.
Can't.
That's the point.
his contention is wetlands already did the site visit. Typically, LMAC will go with wetlands, they would not allow the LMAC person on their property. Then he would not allow 2 other LMAC people on his property. So there's an issue with LMAC in that person's mind. That's all I can say.
Well,
No, Mark?
Well, we don't reject anything, the selectmen will,
We
the
tabled,
selectmen can do. I
we
mean,
tabled the permit, if he
that's
chooses,
how they used it, but the selectmen went out by themselves and did it, so.
okay, if he chooses, he can have the selectmen.
Yeah, yes,
We don't want.
technically, they're only asking us for advice,
I know,
so if the selectmen are the ones who approve, then they're the ones should go there.
yeah.
I mean, Chick used to go there, Adele used to go,
Chick used to go there when he was head of this body, not when he was.
he was both.
But he went as an LMAC member, not as a board of selectmen. Site visits are done by.
This sounds like something for the town attorney to resolve. My office is probably consulting, so it's not for us, it's not moving forward tonight. Somebody else have other important business?
I do.
Yes.
I submitted a proposal to my CASA on August 18th. On how to go about updating the watershed management plan. And I never heard back from him. But I as I mentioned, Mary and I met with Chip. And you know Henry, because you were on the task force, when it was put together. And Chip's recommendation was that we approach this in the same way it was done originally, which is not to have LMAC do this, but to create a task force with membership, not only of LMAC, and LMAC as he was the chair of LMAC, he chaired this task force, and I think the chair of LMAC should chair this task force, not me, but Mike. And then have all of the commissions that are impacted by this involved and on the task force, and specifically back then, it was Inland Wetlands, Conservation Commission, Planning and Zoning, the town sanitarian, the town planner were on the task force. And as you know, back in those days, it wasn't TRC, it was Robert Portman who actually wrote the plan. And so, my recommendation to Mike was that we prepare a motion at this meeting to make to the Board of Selectmen along the following lines. Can I just read it to you? LMAC moves that the Board of Selectmen establish a task force for the purpose of updating the 1998 Columbia Lake Watershed Management Plan and reporting on its progress. Membership shall include but not be limited to representation from the Lake Management Advisory Committee, who shall chair the task force, Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, Conservation Agricultural Commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, Board of Selectmen, Town Sanitarian, Town Planner, Inland Wetlands Agent, and such other commissions and individuals who have an interest in the proceedings of the task force. TRC consultants shall be retained to write the progress report and update the plan.
Do you include conservation?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And open space, right? Conservation, yeah, open space.
It's
I think that's.
currently called Conservation and Agricultural Commission.
Um,
I use the current title names from
Yeah,
the website.
Yeah, I know, I just wanna get the name.
You said local
Yes.
I will second the motion.
Any discussion? I did say, and the first question will get asked by the BOS is, what's this gonna cost? If TRC is writing the update. So with that, we can,
Right.
they've already been partially working on this, so we can certainly. get
And
this.
the selectmen are gonna be the ones that have to, it's not gonna happen without their endorsing this, yeah.
So what's the goal? I mean, they need to update it every so many years or
Well,
the problem?
It was supposed to be updated, David, every 3 or 5 years.
I think in the plan itself, it calls for updating it,
All right.
there's no statute or whatever
No,
required.
But it never has been.
Right,
There's
So-
nothing that they expect to have to fix because something's going wrong.
no, it's just to make sure we could be doing something more, for example, it may come back and say, get those storm drains fixed.
Yep.
Type of thing, so it's to kind of assess where we've been and how do we adjust it to go forward.
Cause
Well, and there-
like Bob said, it could go the other way.
Yes, that's the risk.
There were recommendations that were never, that were discussed but never implemented, and so I think we need to take an accounting. And it's timely with the update of the planning, the 10-year update of the planning document.
Development conservation.
To take an accounting of where are we now with this thing, it was 2 years of work and tons of meetings, Henry knows, he was part of it.
Well, that was my dad, it wasn't me, but
Well,
you
it's-
could, to Dave's point, we could go the wrong way, but. Right now, LMAC going alone is kind of drifting in the wrong direction because everybody's gunning for us.
Yeah.
The zoning commission or other people, and if we get the agricultural commission, if we get all of these people in a joint task force, we're going to try to come up with something that gets the town bought into taking care of the lake. As opposed to just the people sitting around here in LMAC, which is 90+% lake people. You know, and we need the town people and bringing in those other boards and commissions to look at the watershed and come up with a management plan, I think is the sound way of getting cross buy-in. And we may have to give up stuff that's dear to us, but the goal is to get something that everybody gets around. And then we'll have a hopefully better success in the long run.
So LMAC started in '98 whenever.
Not
But
exactly. Not
So
exactly.
who owned
Chick-
it is my
Chick and your
question.
father and a couple of people did, but it was on the side and then Chick brought it in. Like
Yeah.
100%, that was like 90% of our meetings.
I'm just wondering who, like, if it is the inland wetland, who would be more responsible for? Once it's completed or updated, who would own it?
Well, my proposal in the motion was the chair of LMAC, chair of that task force, so I think it would fall probably to.
With the updated water, management plan, the
Yeah.
watershed management plan, it will likely fall to however it's assigned, but right now it came out and it was planning and zoning that really had to implement it because it was the nutrient allocation plan. And so everybody on that commission helped, task force helped planning and zoning get this adopted, and the town in back of it.
Yeah, I
That
guess
should
I'm
be
just
listed.
wondering why, I think it's awesome we're dusting this thing off, right? It's just, are we really the right, P is Mike, hopefully wants to do it, but the right team to start this.
Should it
Well,
was started,
who else would it be,
who else,
right?
it's a member of every of every committee or every commission.
Who's more, who owns the watershed?
And who cares more about
Well,
the
I'm just
plan
saying.
than we do, I don't know.
It was a product of, it was a product of LMAC initially.
Yeah.
LMAC was the one that pulled the task force together and got the thing done. And LMAC was the one that said it should be planning and zoning because we wanna do the nutrient allocation, and the way to do that regulation is through planning and zoning as opposed to something like a voting ordinance. And so, and all along, when there have been tweaks to the nutrient allocation plan, and the, spreadsheet and worksheet, they've all been coordinated, usually principally with LMAC, starting first with the selectmen and with planning and zoning. This expands it further than planning and zoning, which I think is smart.
Does Chick show any interest in being involved?
No, I asked him, I asked David, I said, would you be willing to be on it?
He was the whole thing.
Yeah,
No.
well, I think we can,
Yeah, I
we
mean,
can
he'll
call on
advise us
him
on
for
the side, but-
historical references.
Yeah, and he brought me some of his materials from, yeah.
The most
Pamphlet, that's a big one.
The most recent changes to the nutrient allocation plan were done a couple of years ago by the town planner. And then adopted by the planning zone.
Yeah, I know, I'm sticking.
Yeah, but Dan O'Neill was on LMAC and worked on all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
He was a liaison, but
Yeah.
the actual heavy lifting was done by the town planner.
My last comment is.
That's what we're here for,
Is
right?
would it be worthwhile to say LMAC is presenting to the selectmen to revisit this? And who would the selectmen choose to lead the effort? It may come back and say LMAC, but to me, it just doesn't sound like, I mean, we care a lot, but I'm just not sure it's in our purview here to
So-
run with it, with all these different entities, part of the task force.
To be on zoning, you have to like take classes and stuff, right?
Yes.
Is that involved in having this plan? Someone making those changes and implementing?
That's why you would have somebody from planning and zoning.
That's what I mean.
Yes, staff,
Yeah.
What do you think, Juan?
I'm fine, just pinching, and see what happens.
Well, I mean, Craig's asking a good question,
Well,
is LMAC the right place?
Should LMAC be leading it?
No one else is concerned at the moment, they haven't heard this.
Well, they haven't heard any, they don't look at it, or they're.
But that's the point,
Well, there's
that's the
representation
point,
for every
nobody else
board,
is thinking
yeah.
about it.
It's just.
So it might actually be a pretty quick review.
Well,
That
if you look at
that
the watershed
satisfies.
plan, what, it's the basis of our charter. I mean, LMAC is responsible for the health and welfare of the lake. And the watershed management plan is the extension of that and how we are going to deal with all of the things that we're putting into this 10-year plan for the town. And so even though it requires zoning to implement, it is, you know, the bread and butter of this committee. If it's shot down, then I don't know where we turn to try to, you know, deal with things with the lake in terms of trying to do more than band-aiding things.
Okay, I think it also depends on to what extent the update is going to be. I mean, how extensive is the update going to be?
Yeah.
Is it review of the existing plan and say, yes, that's still permanent and still our charge, or are we going to completely redo it? Will be the other end of the spectrum. You know, there's some
Which
political aspects to the update, I think.
If it's a 5-year review, maybe that's all it takes.
Yeah.
Well, if it's 98, it's more than 5 years, but.
Well,
But
but
the
there was.
sorry, Henry, the first part of this, I think, is the report card on,
Right.
well, you know,
Right.
how has it worked?
Right, now we know.
Has it worked at all? Has it not worked? And
Are there
what-
new things to be
what
implemented?
parts of this were affected?
Right.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. It's almost 30 years.
Okay.
So I think
And
it is timely to
Oh, absolutely.
to take a look and see. And once we get the task force constituted, but maybe that's the first discussion. Are we doing a wholesale review, or are we just doing, you know, tweaking the edges here to see? And then we just go on from there. You know, it can be as big a project as we want it to turn into,
I
but
was also just charged to create a traffic calming study committee. So I'll be busy.
The other thing is Mary pointed out before she left, there were a lot of recommendations in the existing plan that have just sat idle. Some of them may want to be revisited, some of them can probably go away. And there may be new ones, that need to be, done, but,
Modern materials, you mean things like that?
and it may come back and say, you know, here's how we should move forward with the concept of an education plan. That's in, you know, being discussed for the 10-year plan. I don't know, but in any case, personally, I feel that LMAC has the leadership vested interest in this. I don't know that we necessarily need to say we're gonna share it. I mean, we can implement it. And I don't know where Mike stands on being willing to share it either. So
right, he's not here, which is why
That's what
it's
happens.
easy to.
Yeah, not here, you get signed.
I mean, it's possible to me that the chair Almanac would share that task.
well, I think the important thing is to have, let's say, it doesn't necessarily, the way you worded it, doesn't necessarily say the chair of LMAC has to chair it, but the LMAC has to chair it, because it should be led by someone who's willing to make the commitment to do it and to do it right. And if Mike says he doesn't want to do that, we should come up with somebody else from our group.
Which I'm not volunteering for, but
Yeah, well,
Craig, so.
Could I make a comment? Hello?
Mary's back, okay.
I'll be honest, there's no way I would chair it.
No,
Yeah.
but you still
Yeah.
participate, good,
Definitely.
thank you.
Yeah.
Could
Mary,
I
did
make
you
a
want to
comment?
Yes,
Hello?
yes,
Yes.
we hear you.
I'm still here. Yeah, no, I'm a huge advocate, obviously, after 28 years of revisiting this. And part of it is, I think, was as explained by TRC. The modeling's changed, the data's changed. What stormwater runoff was minor in that, nutrient allocation was huge and still will be. So a basis for this will be, after 28 years, the data's changed and we have to look at and say, do the solutions then change? So the report card I love, and the opportunity to say, what more can we do based on 28 years of change? So I'm a huge advocate that we do this. Now, who, orchestrates or manages is a different question. And I hear it, but I think the concept should go before the Board of Selectmen that we need this after 28 years. And we need this after the data we just discussed earlier tonight. Thank you.
Will you, after you vote on this, will you present at the September 16th meeting? Concept to the board?
The board.
The next board of selectmen meeting is September 16th. You're also gonna present your.
Yes.
Because you got a lot. Come.
That's a lot for the selectmen to take on in one
I
night.
won't, I'm just coming back from a trip,
It'll be October.
It doesn't, yeah, we don't, it's not like we're on fire. We
no, if it's taken 28
So you gotta
years.
talk to
yeah,
Mike.
that's
we don't
not-
install it that far.
I gotta talk to Mike.
Yeah, we gotta talk to Mike.
Yeah, I think it would be best to take up at the first meeting of the selectmen in October.
Yeah.
Because that would give us, another meeting, because we're gonna meet on October 1.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, and that way we can be, more together on the, how we present this motion to the selectmen.
When will the BOS meeting be in October?
First Tuesday.
7th.
So the 7th, that works.
I don't give Frank enough time to prepare his presentation.
Yes, exactly.
You might wanna have a recommended.
Love it.
Oh, yes. Yes, I did. That's right. I'll take it up.
Yeah, because that was membership.
Yeah.
A charge for.
The committee should be charged, with reviewing and updating. That gives us a little bit of an opportunity to, control that it doesn't just get all thrown out.
Thanks, Muffy.
Thank you.
It was moved and seconded, so we should vote on it, and then we'll take it up further on, or do we wanna wait until the first meeting so we can talk further with Mike? Do you wanna withdraw the motion?
We should probably talk to Mike.
All right, let's leave the motion on the table.
Table the motion.
Table the motion, all right. I heard a motion to table, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of tabling the motion?
Aye.
All right, the motion remains on the table until October 1.
Thank you.
Yes. Is there any other pressing business on the agenda, or can they be, wait till after?
I have one more thing, it'll take 2 seconds. Couple meetings ago, I talked about conduct by LMAC members and perceived perception by Board of Selectmen members in regard to certain things that LMAC members do or don't do. In the last month, I've witnessed a couple of instances where Board of Selectmen members have not adhered to the lake regulations. I think we as LMAC members have to hold ourselves to a higher standard than just what the regulations say. It really is not going to help us in dealing with the Board of Selectmen if we don't adhere to the regulations we develop.
You said board of selectmen members were not following the rules?
You meant,
No,
okay.
I'm
You meant, no.
LMAC members are not following the rules. Board of Selectmen members know this. And they'll hold it against us. They've said it publicly.
What, can you give without?
No, I'm not gonna get into specifics now. I don't think it's appropriate in public.
What do you mean in terms of operating on the lake or something else, or?
Other things, operating on lake and other things. So I think. Word to us all, we've got to hold ourselves to a higher standard. I mean.
Or at least to the standard that we hold everybody else.
I was on, about myself from other experience.
It's the same thing.
So, right. Yeah, at least adhere to the rules and regulations, okay? Just really annoying. All the work we do is gonna do for nothing when we get to the Board of Selectmen if we don't adhere to our own regulations. So, thank you.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motion to adjourn.
At
Second.
9:19.
All in
Second.
favor?
Alright.
Aye.
Adjourned at 9:19.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you, Henry, for leading us tonight. Frank, congratulations.